So can you see the screen now?
Yes.
Oh, okay, great. I'm going to remove my glasses. Too much of reflection over there. So I think you can see me, but I can't see you. But that's all right, isn't it? Okay, so I formally welcome all of you to my first webinar of 2025, From Petals to Palette, where I am very happy to share with you my journey of growing my own colors and also share some insights with you today on this particular topic. So I'm just going to tell very briefly because I see some of you are new here, as to how I began my journey into working with natural colors. I have a detailed video on YouTube where I talk about my journey in length, and there is also a little bit of description, that is background about me in my on my blog post as well. So, just in a nutshell, I have a background in molecular biology. So, I did my doctorate studies in cell biology and biochemistry and also molecular biology. But there are lots of things that happen in between, and then I turned into a very avid pigment forager and paint maker. I also did a bit of freelance illustrations for a local newspaper here and published my own booklet as well, which was for children. And I now indulge very passionately in growing my own colors and also growing my own vegetable garden. So I am a regenerative organic gardener. My journey of working with the natural colors actually began in 2011, where I had taken a sabbatical for a year. Didn't just wanted to take a break from my intense scientific career, and that's when I wanted to learn this Indian folk art, and that is. And it is centered around using natural colors. And that's where I first got introduced to red ochre. So my first paintings were all done with red ochre. Then a lot of things happen in between. I will not go into the details of it, but that's in 2016 is where I delved deeper into this ancient craft because I reconnected to this dormant artist inside me. That is also the time when I was on maternity leave. So then in 2017, I started to make my own handmade watercolors, and I was also offering them on Etsy. This was a very short stint. It didn't really excite me so much. I loved exploring new pigments and understanding them, but making colors and selling them was not my thing. Then in 2020, I rebranded my website where I started sharing knowledge about different types of natural pigments, and I was also focusing on the toxicity aspect of many of the natural pigments, why I don't work with certain pigments and things like that. And then that's when I also learned how to make videos, how to shoot films. Yeah, the same thing. Voiceovers and photography. I learned a lot by just going through numerous tutorials, books, and that's when I was confident enough. Then I published my first course. I started on the YouTube first, and then I made a whole course which was published on Teachable, and the first course was on making watercolor paints. Excuse me. And then further down the lane, I also published some ebooks, and now I give more than one webinars a year. So this is me in a nutshell. So why grow a dye garden? It's because it has a very positive impact on the environment. And my key sometimes don't work. It encourages a sustainable use of land and also improves the soil health. It reduces your reliance on synthetic colors. It supports the biodiversity and pollinators. When you grow your own garden, you know what is the type of plant you're working with, what kind of pigment you're going to get, and how you have grown these plants. So if you've grown it organically, you know that your pigment is very high quality without any chemicals. You're working with safe material to make your paints or dyes, inks, wherever your interest lies. So there is only positive impact. And anything that you make afterwards also goes back to earth. So it's a full circle. And then you have so many creative possibilities. You get a wide range of colors from nature, from blues, yellows, reds, and greens. And all of these, the primary colors, the blue, yellow, red, they can all be mixed so well to get a huge variety of secondary colors and tertiary colors. So there is, you can get a rainbow palette basically. And the pigments that you extract from nature, they can be used for applications on textile, paper, and you can just use them as a paint on the walls of your house, and just many, many possibilities. The colors that you obtain in nature are quite unique. They are non-replicable, because every season is different. So you do get a lot of variations from year to year in the hue that you obtain from either your garden, or when you go to different regions from land, the color of the soil also differs. The chemical composition might be the same, but there are various factors that can affect the final hue of the pigment. You develop a personal connection to the final result. So gardening, when you start to garden, you create a very mindfulness practice, and you learn to be patient through gardening, because gardening, when you grow a plant from a seed, it takes several months till the plant is mature and it starts producing flowers. So it's a process that requires a lot of planning and a lot of waiting basically. So you have to wait like 5-6 months to get the produce, and then you have to be very patient for that time. And when you witness the transformation of the plant that you grew from a seed into the final product, it is very fulfilling. You connect to it so deeply because it was grown with so much of love and care, and you appreciate the pigment that you obtain from your own hard work so much more, as opposed to going to an art store and picking a paint tube out of the shelf. It's very different. You can customize your palette when you start to garden. You can plant plants of different types, which produce from where you can obtain your reds, yellows, and greens. And then you can tell a story through every color that you create. I grow plants for making my own pigments and paints, and I use them for my own personal use. I'm not selling these pigments, I'm not selling the paints. This gives me a lot of satisfaction because I connect to the scenes that I capture on my travels or around me in the house so much more, as opposed to commercially bought, produced and store-bought paints. One of the crucial things of setting up a dye garden is a very thoughtful planning. So you need to see whether you are in the northern hemisphere or southern hemisphere. The direction of the sun is going to vary. So having a right location for your garden is very important. So there are a lot of things that come into mind. Where should I put the garden? How big does it need to be? Then what's the direction of the sunlight? How much sunlight is required by my plant to exhibit its full potential? Then the condition of the soil. If you have a land, you really need to assess what type of soil it is, whether your plants can thrive in these conditions or not, and if you need to amend the soil. Then if there is an easy access to water, if you are having a plot on land, and also on the balcony, if you don't have to carry pails of water to water your plants. Since I think we're all on in the northern hemisphere, so the best location for having your dye plants is south and southwest, because the pigment concentration, the intensity is dependent on the energy from the sunlight. You don't have to have 6 to 7 hours of sunlight, but if you're in a southern position, you do get enough ample sunlight. I have a southwest facing balcony, so that is also enough for my plants. In the school, in my son's school, we have a south facing position, so that also works. But I've also grown plants where there was partial shade. In the school, there is a partial shade to one section of the plot, and that works beautifully for my indigo plants. When you're starting out, start out really small, because from my own personal experience, I had a plot of land which was about 1.5 meter by 0.5 meter wide, and it was really big because you constantly have to weed, you have to take care of the plants, and it becomes so much more work. The soil condition on a plot of land is very essential. So in my course, I go through the process of testing out your soil. So I demonstrate how you can detect what type of soil you have and how you can amend it, and also the pH of the soil. So I was lucky to have a lovely plot of land which was loam, and it was, because it was an organic garden before, the soil quality is, there was very good. And also in the school garden, I had to amend the soil a little bit because there were too many rocks in that region, in this plot of land. But I amended using the garden, the soil from the school's compost, and then it was all fixed. Access to water is really important, because I've had times when in the patch of land that I first started my garden, I had to carry sometimes, water cans to water the patch, and it was quite cumbersome. On the balcony, it's much easier. Even though we don't have a tap in the balcony, it's not so. I just have to make 4 or 5 trips from the kitchen to the balcony to water my plants. But since I use really deep pots, I don't have to water my plants that frequently. And mulch your plot or pots really well so that you prevent the moisture from the soil going away. So it retains the moisture when you mulch. It creates this barrier for the water, to prevent the water from evaporating from the soil. Okay, so another question: if you don't have a land, can you still grow a garden? Yes, because you might have a neighbor or relative that would allow you to use part of their land, and you could also rent a plot at a community garden. That's what I did, with a nominal fee of 50 euros a year. I had access to water, garden tools, compost, mulch, everything, all the gardening supplies basically. Here is a picture which is from my balcony dye garden, where I have a small raised bed and I grew my plants in this raised bed, and they grew really, really well. And this is the dye garden in a community space. Next question is what to plant. So there are lots of factors to consider: the climate, available space, desired colors. So climate is really important, but most of the plants that I will be mentioning, they grow all around the world, so they're not really like specific tropical type of plants or plants that are growing only in the temperate zones. These plants grow really everywhere, and depending on the space, how much space you have, you may want to consider whether you want to grow plants that are not so bushy or taller, and of course the desired colors. So before I start my gardening process, I always plan my garden where I want to put my plants, and this is a plan from my balcony garden. So here is my recommendation of top dye plants for anybody starting out dye garden for the first time. Marigolds. They come in different colors and different plant sizes. So they are really easy to grow, and you can get a range of yellow to gold. Then you just need to remember to deadhead them to encourage more blooms. Then Japanese indigo. This is a picture from my balcony. It doesn't look so great here because it was during summers, and the sun intensity was too high and some of the leaves had wilted, and that's when I figured that the Japanese indigo doesn't really require full sun strength. A partial shade is much better for these plants to flourish. And in one of my blog posts I have shared pictures of Japanese indigo thriving in my dye garden, so you can check it out. And I love this plant because it can be used so beautifully. I grow indigo for pigment because I love this blue pigment. You can do a fresh leaf dyeing process, and this is just an experiment I did, and you can use it for painting, you know. Coreopsis is a beautiful plant. It is a no-fuss plant, doesn't have any specific requirements for soil, similar to marigolds. It can grow anywhere. And Coreopsis produces colors which are ranging from orange to red. You know, you have to harvest flowers frequently to encourage more blooms in your plant. And the whole plant can be actually used for extracting dyes and pigments, so not just the flowers. So here is this is the first frame. There's this three different colors I obtained from the Coreopsis. Then this orange color is the color of the Coreopsis pigment, which was turned into a paint. This is from the madder, this beautiful pinkish hue, and this bright pink is the cochineal. And you can use Coreopsis for bundle dyeing. It gives beautiful results. So here are the three Coreopsis flowers along with the stem, and that one is the cosmos. So madder is another plant because reds are not so easy to get by in nature, and madder produces red to pink color. For madder, you need to wait 3 to 5 years before you can harvest the roots for extracting color. So you need to be very patient. So here is the madder root from the first year that I planted these, and this is the second year. So it has grown a little bit in thickness, but the intensity of the color is still not there. So as this root matures, the intensity of the dye also increases. Dyer's chamomile is really is a perennial plant. So once it's established itself, it's going to come back over and over again, and it gives beautiful yellow to greenish hues. So you can modify the color as well by modifiers similar to the marigold. And this plant requires full sun, but partial shade also works. And once again, for any dye plants that you're working with, you need to harvest the flowers regularly to produce more blooms, because that's where the most the intensity of the color lies. And you don't want the flowers to go into the seeding stage, because once the plant gets the signal that it is going into seeding stage, then the energy of the plant will be going towards the seeds and not in the flowers where you are going to draw your pigments from. So it's very essential that you keep deadheading the plants to have more blooms and to delay the process of the seeding. Caring for your dye gardens. So you have to see how frequently you need to water. And so in the initial stages, when you have seedlings, you need to water frequently to encourage root growth. But there are several stages in it. When you're watering your seedlings, make sure that you water it thoroughly so that it remains moist and not waterlogged, which is really important. And once the plants are established, then depending on how the weather is and how the soil conditions are, you can see how frequently you need to water. For me, in my balcony, the temperature can go up to 50 degrees because of the heat that is radiated from the walls. So I put my pots on the railings where there is more airflow and not down. And since I use deeper pots, it is mixed with sheep pellets and mulch and a terra preta soil. So there is a very high retention of water in the pots. So I only water my pots twice or thrice a week. And the same goes for the ground plants, 2 to 3 times a week, only in the peak summer season if there has been no rain. But if the rains are there, then I hardly have to go and water the plants. So I just observe how the climate is, the weather conditions, and depending on that, I water my plants. But I do go regularly 2 to 3 times a week to my plot on land to tend to the plants and to make sure that there are no damages caused by snails and slugs, which does happen quite a bit. So I use certain ways to protect my plants. So you could use companion planting. I make homemade sprays, and this is especially for the aphids, coreopsis and cosmos. They are very prone to aphid attacks. So I use neem oil spray or garlic water spray, fermented chili spray. It works only if there is no rain. Now, when the rain is there, last year we had really a very wet season, so none of these things were working. So I go and hunt for the larvae of ladybugs and introduce them into my garden, and especially the balcony garden. On land, it is different because there's a completely different ecosystem altogether. So plants are taken care of by the external factors. But on balcony, you have to literally introduce them physically to protect your plants from the infestation of aphids. Then maintaining a garden hygiene is really important for removing weeds. You need to do this regularly and also clearing the debris. Once your plants have established really well and they're tall enough, then you can be a little relaxed. But in the beginning, during the spring season, when it is just starting, you have to regularly tend to your plot of land. If you're having a garden on land, in the pots, it's much easier. But I go through this process again in detail in my course online. Last year I grew indigo. This was companion dye gardening. I grew indigo alongside scabiosa, coreopsis, chamomile, and cosmos. And it worked really well because all of these plants, they are fantastic pollinators. And this is on the school garden. So the school garden has, we also grow, the children grow vegetables, they grow their own food, how to do beekeeping. So it attracts all these pollinators. It helps the entire ecosystem. And then indigo, as I mentioned, is a bushy, low-growing plant, so you can easily grow them with scabiosa, coreopsis, and cosmos, which are a little taller plants, so they can be planted behind, and indigo can make a really nice bushy boundary of the plot, and they coexist really, really well without having any competition. And it creates a beautiful visual appeal to your garden. There are certain challenges that comes with gardening. I can't go into the detail because I'm already a little over time. That is the poor germination rate of your seeds. If you're starting garden from seeds, there's an issue of the pests, soil issues. All of these can be tackled with a right approach, and of course weather challenges. I always have to keep this in mind that gardening is a journey of learning and adapting, and there is no foolproof system, and there are no mistakes in gardening, because whatever you do, you always learn something new. It's a constant learning process. Now, since I have started my gardening in the Waldorf school, I'm also learning about the biodynamic agriculture system, which is totally different from the modern day gardening practices. So there is a lot to learn. So the critical thing of having dye plants is to harvesting your dye plants. Yeah, this is what you're cultivating your garden for. And harvesting dye plants usually should be done at the peak of the color potency, is from July to August, September as well. This is when the intensity of the color is at its max. the leaves and stems are typically harvested in the morning. That's I'm referring to indigo plants. I always harvest them in the early morning hours when the moisture levels are lowest for better dye absorption. And after you've harvested your plants, it's important to store them um, properly. If you're using them right away, that's another thing. But there's usually so much of harvest that you can't process all of your dye plants all at once. You can keep them and they can be processed in the winter months also. These plants will not lose their color. So I usually hang the indigo leaves upside down in a cool drying area, then ensure there is good airflow, keep them out of direct sunlight, and dry for several days. If you have a dehydrator, you could use that, but I don't use any electronic gadgets. I do it just the normal, um, old traditional way, and it works fine. So I have these jars of my dried flowers from 2022, and I regularly look at them. There is no mold growth. They are so beautifully dried. Here is I have some of these flowers drying on the kitchen paper towel, and yeah, so I leave them like that for a week or two before I store them in the storage jar. So there are lots of things you can do with dye plants, and since you all are familiar with it, I'm sure you are already doing certain things. So I created pastels last year. I've also used dye plants, the color obtained from them, as fabric paints. It works beautifully. And then I naturally dyed raffia with the fresh leaf dyeing method using indigo leaves, and it was beautiful. I didn't have to use any mordants. So there are lots of things you can do. And on that note, I have this course that is From Petals to Palette, where you can learn much deeper into how to cultivate a dye garden. I also share a lot of different things, how I tackle taking care of plants when you're on leave, on holidays, and how to take care of the indigo if they have wilted, how you can regenerate your plants. There's so many things I go through. I can't even remember because it's a really, really big class. And every year I add new lessons to the class, whatever new things I learn. So, and I've made it really easy and flexible, so you can pay it in installments at $19 a month. So, yeah, making it easier for you to dive into this creative journey. So, in the end, I like to thank you all for joining me on this exploration of dye gardening. And I hope this inspires you to grow your own palette and reconnect with the natural world. So, I'm now happy to take any questions that you may have.
I saw that you had cornflowers and safflowers. What colors do they produce? I'm assuming the
Cornflowers of
cornflowers are blue.
different kinds. Cornflowers, I had blue cornflower and also had a purple one. So blue cornflower will give you a really nice blue color. But you can shift the color by using modifiers like a baking soda or a citric acid or lemon juice. And safflower, I've had very unfortunate experience with safflowers because these slugs, they just love this plant. Last year I was so happy to see they were growing this big. They were all eaten away. I had covered it with the plastic jar as well so that the slugs would not go up. And I had put beer traps around it as well. But they got through the whole thing and they ate away my entire plant. And the first year they just perished in the intense heat. They didn't like it, although the safflowers love heat, but the flower bud just couldn't survive. And so I want to try once more this year if I can grow it or not. But safflowers, they have beautiful orange color. and it's a cold extraction. You don't use heat to extract the color from safflowers. So I bought that from Italy in Florence, from what is this art store? Oh, I cannot remember. Oh, anyway, in Florence, there is a very famous art store, and then that's where I got this flower and experimented with it because I wanted to have my own, but it didn't work. But cornflowers I just use for decorating my cakes and salads. It's edible plant, so and it gives a nice visual appearance to my garden. It's a beautiful blue and attracts pollinators.
I've experimented with zinnia before, and the only color I really get is from a deep red zinnia. But even the orange, I thought I would get yellows and oranges, but I get very little from any other zinnia. And I
It
don't
gives a
get
very
anything.
beige color.
Yeah.
It gives
And even
very beige.
fires, it doesn't do very much.
Yeah, I mean zinnias are good as companion plants. You can do haphazome with them. Work with children. So because it's a flower I want to grow in the school. But dahlias, on the other hand, they are really pretty. They give really lovely dyes compared to the zinnias. Zinnias are not what they look like when it comes to getting the colors out of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Delphinium are really beautifully strong and in perfumes.
Yeah, delphiniums are good. Then you have the geraniums also, which is grown very popularly here in Austria. You have these flower baskets outside the house hanging. They're really good plants to be grown. But as
Are
a
they good for reds then?
Yes, the reds are really nice. They have intense color, but they are all anthocyanin based because if you want to make like pigments out of them, then the color will change. It will not
Yeah.
remain that bright. That's why I don't grow them because with Cosmos coreopsis, they have the class of pigments is quite different, so the color doesn't change. They're very stable. And that's why these plants are more reliable when you want to make lake pigments. But if you're doing natural dyeing, then it's a different story altogether. Natural dyeing will be good with dahlias or the even the zinnias and geraniums maybe, but you will need a lot of geraniums and delphiniums to work with. But for making lake pigments, they're not ideal. For inks, yes, but again, the color will be not so light fast because they're anthocyanin based. So,
Yeah.
which is why you have to see where your interest lies, and accordingly, you can adjust your palette, the color palette of your garden, the
Yeah.
focus.
I use my lake pigments and inks just in my sketchbook. I don't use them for my major studio work because of that.
Light fastness, yeah.
Right, right.
Because
And
I use,
I like it. I like to watch it change too.
yeah,
Kind of interesting. But I do mainly keep it to my sketchbooks and I don't sell it or anything
no,
because
because I have used elderberries. Elderberries are great for making the purple ink. And
Mhm.
I made it in 2017 and it's still the same. The color hasn't degraded and it's in my sketchbook. So it's the
Yeah.
same for me. If I were to use color which are light fast and I would rather work with sumac or walnut, or I recently found like last year I was cycling and I saw a whole tree for the first time in Austria. I saw oak galls. I
Oh,
said, what?
wow.
What is this? Oh my God, I was so delighted. I have only read about it, but there was
Yes.
a whole tree loaded with oak galls. Of course, the tree is really tall. I couldn't reach. I'm not a tall person, but I
Uh,
still managed to get a few of them. And I waited for the wasp to make a hole and fly out of the galls. So now the galls are ready to be used. But
wonderful.
I was so happy, and the tree is still there. I'm pretty sure the oak galls are hanging over there. But these are the colors I use if I want to have it, if it is exposed to the light. So I would rather use tannin based inks as opposed to these beautiful bright color ones. They are not light fast.
The
Even
cochineal is much more light fast. It will fade a little bit, but it takes a lot longer.
Yeah, no, cochineals are great. But yeah, if you're vegan or if you're against killing animals, insects, I
Yeah.
mean, they're dead insects, but still, it's so intense. I mean, I'm amazed with this insect. You just need a tiny bit and it gives you a bucket load of pigment. This is so intense.
Yeah.
So you don't really need much. I had tried it and I bought mine from Tenerife, and I actually saw these cacti where they were growing. And it was fascinating for me because I had only read it in books and the research papers where they come from. And I actually saw them because we were in the southern part of Tenerife and there's like full everywhere these cacti and they were growing, having these infestation with the cochineal bugs when I squished a little bit. Just to see the color change, and it was beautiful.
Wow.
So this fascinates me when I see what I've read and you see it in actual. It's quite fascinating. But that's why when I bought my cochineal from Tenerife.
Okay, I want to thank you. This has been a really great presentation. I'm going to have to leave now. And I'm pretty sure I signed up. I'm going to have to check my emails because I can't remember. But again, thank you so much. And it was nice to see everybody.
I'm glad to have you with us. Thank you for listening. And sorry about the technical issues with the presentation.
That was fine. All right. Thank you. Bye.
Yeah.
Ciao.
Bye.
Ciao.
Thank you. Yes, I too have to get off, but thank you so much.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you so much for your support and really appreciate it.
Well, I love that you do so much with such a small little plot.
Yes, you can do so much,
Yeah, and it's easier to maintain rather than making some overwhelming
Yeah, but
amount.
I tell you that even the small plot is a lot of work. It's so much work. I can't tell you how much it is. Constantly weeding, constantly taking care of it, and it's a lot. That's why if somebody's starting, it is like a king size bed rather than a teeny tiny child's crib.
Yeah. Well, I'll give it a try and let you know how it goes.
That would be great. All right.
Thank
Thanks,
you so
Chris.
much.
Have a
Bye-bye.
great day. Have a good weekend.
You
Ciao.
too. You too.
I too thank you for your time. It's been really enlightening and I've enjoyed it and I look forward to some of your classes.
Thank you so much, Tammy. Thank you for being here.
Okay. You have a wonderful day.
Bye-bye.
Yes, the same for me. It's very interesting. I'm just starting. I'm delighted to find out that I have most of these flowers in my garden already, so I can get started now. It's been very interesting.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you very much.
Have a great
Bye-bye.
weekend. Bye-bye. Ciao.
And you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Ciao, ciao.